Um, okay, I'm checking in again. Last week, I was really down on myself because I felt like I wanted so badly to be in a different situation professionally, and I didn't know how to get there. And I feel like that's the story of my life. I'm 33 years old, and I don't really know what I'm doing. It reminds me of my favorite Oscar Wilde quote. Actually, I want to get it directly. If you want to be a grocer or a general or a politician or a judge, you will invariably become it. That is your punishment. If you never know what you want to be, if you live what some might call the dynamic life, but what I will call the artistic life, if each day you are unsure of who you are and what you will never become anything, and that is your reward. And thank you, Oscar Wilde, for framing it as a reward, even though at present it feels like a punishment. My sister is a doctor. She seems like she's living the rewarding life. She's very busy and she's very stressed out, but the grass is always greener on the other side, and her certainty in her path is enviable. I think a lot of times I'm grateful to have a ever questioning personality, but sometimes it gets me in a little bit of a rut, and I feel like I'm in that rut. So last week I was feeling stuck, and I promised myself I would do 3 things to remind myself that I was in fact moving forward, even if it didn't feel like I was moving forward. And I accomplished those 3 things and then some. I heard someone say that every 7 years you kind of shed your skin and need a new one. It's not going to be universally true for everyone, but it's like the first 7 years of marriage, the first 7 years that you're in a job. There's something that happens over the course of that 7 years where you go from being uncomfortable in something new or adjusting to something new to growing comfortable with it, to getting to the point where you've kind of mastered it, or you're so comfortable in it that if you don't switch it up, you kind of atrophy a little. I don't think that that applies across the board, but it's certainly where I'm at professionally. I feel like I'm really looking for something new, and so new, in fact, that it's scaring me a little bit to even think about. New, like starting a business, new, like posting on YouTube, just really trying to reinvent or maybe not reinvent, but access the creative side of myself that I have abandoned for a while now. When you're trying to pursue something more creative, something, dare I say, artistic, there is not a career ladder that you can climb. There is not a linear path that you can step through in order to achieve those types of goals. As Oscar Wilde would say, that is the benefit of it, but it's also one of the challenges. I feel sort of on the precipice of something, whether that's quitting my job or moving or whatever. I feel this like really freaky anxiety propelling me forward, and I don't want to do things from a place of anxiety, but at the same time, I think it's my body launching me forward into something new. And that frenetic energy in the mornings can really benefit me into tackling a to-do list or diving in optimistically into some tasks. But by the afternoon, I'm completely debilitated and frustrated and fearful that I am not going to go anywhere or amount to anything. And haphazardly, actually, I picked this up, Seneca's Letters and Dialogues. I have to say it's really helping. I'm not going to give a lot of advice on this channel because what do I know? But I am going to recommend books that I'm reading that have helped me. And in my last video, I recommended Susie Welch's book. In this video, I'm going to recommend you read this edition of Seneca's Dialogues and Letters. So allow me, if you will, a short tangent on Seneca. Seneca is a Stoic philosopher. I enjoy reading, period, but I enjoy reading philosophy in particular. And I am always a little bit hesitant to read the Stoics because the manosphere has really popularized Stoic philosophers of late. And I find it really frustrating. And I kind of try to avoid anything the manosphere is into. That being said, the manosphere, understandably, has completely butchered the actual meaning of Stoicism. And I don't need to avoid something really useful just because the manosphere has turned it into something crappy. There are exceptions to all of this, but speaking in generalities, Stoicism was actually a Greek philosophy that started before the Romans, before the Stoics that we are familiar with, like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. Before that, there were Greek Stoics whose writings are, I think, mostly lost to history, which is why the Roman Stoics are the ones that we read in order to, in part, understand the Greeks that came before, but also just to understand the philosophy in general. Another interesting difference between the earlier Greek Stoicism and the later Roman Stoicism is the earlier Greek Stoicism focused on two areas. One, their understanding of the cosmos, which would kind of be like our physics, and then the other was living a moral life. They focused on both of those more or less equally, so far as I understand. Whereas the Romans who came after really focused on living an ethical life. So the Stoicism that we are exposed to is more about the ethical framework and less about the physical world science that was involved in the Greek version. So it's kind of a question of emphasis. The Roman Stoics were not really reinventing the wheel of that ethical framework, but they were adapting it to their own lives, which is why it's so entertaining and supportive to read, because you have someone like Marcus Aurelius who's fighting wars and trying to lead a country and taking an ethical framework to adapt it to those really difficult, realistic scenarios. So it makes for really engaging reading material. So Seneca wrote plays, he wrote letters, he wrote essays, he was a public intellectual, and he was the tutor to the insane Emperor Nero, who would eventually exile him and then force him to commit suicide, which is just murder. I don't know why people say that he was forced to commit suicide. He was murdered. But anyway, one of the reasons I get so frustrated by the manosphere hijacking stoicism as a way of trying to validate their thought process is that they've misinterpreted it to align very closely with their pre-existing assumptions. So, actually, in the introduction of this book, some fella named C.D.N. Costa, he talks about how Christianity tried to directly align Stoic philosophy with Christianity so that they could live harmoniously together. So much so that there was a fake rumor that St. Paul and Seneca exchanged letters, which they never ever did. It is intentionally something that sort of fits in neatly with a Christian moral framework, not across the board, but in some ways. The other thing is it's really easy to hear Stoicism, to hear the word Stoic, and to interpret it as being a hardo. Like, no matter what eventuality, what hardship, you grin and bear it and you show no emotional response to it. And that is being a man. And that's actually, one, not being a man, and two, not being stoic. Stoic philosophy is actually much more emotionally engaged than that. It's advocating that you're incredibly self aware and thoughtful of your emotions, and that is not the same as not having emotions, the healthy metabolism of your emotions, if anything. For example, one of the first sections in this book is a like 20-page single spaced typed letter. So a very, very, very long letter to his mother, attempting to demonstrate that he understands her grief, to empathize with her grief, and if possible, alleviate her grief following his exile from Rome. Level of patience and thoughtfulness that he exhibits towards his mother and also towards himself is not the kind of stoicism that the manosphere is advocating. And I think that goes without saying. So, why am I bringing any of this up? In this frenetic energy of, I don't know what I'm doing, where am I going, what if it's nowhere, what if it's off a cliff? Reading Seneca is a like intellectually engaging way to slow me down. He has a very systematic way of writing where he allows one thought to lead to the next thought to lead to the next thought and to draw his emotions out in that same kind of way. So when I'm feeling inundated with stress, kind of writing in the Seneca style of naming an emotion, describing why I might feel that way, alleviating myself of some of that feeling has really been helpful. So I recommend if you're feeling really overwhelmed to read this. It's been more relatable than reading Marcus Aurelius, because Marcus Aurelius is this incredible emperor who's leading an army in war. He has such a lofty ambition, a lofty life. Like everything about him is just that it feels too far away from me right now. I don't feel that way. So reading Seneca write a letter to his mom about the meaning of home, how lonely his mom must feel now that he's been exiled. There's a there's less of a loftiness that makes it more relatable. It makes it more applicable directly to my life. I highly recommend reading it, and I'll put the details in the caption. But now to the important part, which is, what are the 3 things I'm going to do this week? I have to travel for work this week, so I need to be realistic about my goals. Goal number 1. I love building a PowerPoint presentation. And I wonder if I made a PowerPoint presentation for my career, like my immediate next steps, as if I am the client. So it's not really the same thing as fake it till you make it, which I really don't like as a philosophy, although I understand the merit of it. It's not really for me. It's more like if someone else were in my exact dilemma and they asked me to help them create a strategy, what would I tell them? What kind of presentation would I give them? Like if I were my own chief of staff, what would I strategically recommend to my boss? But I'm my boss and I'm my chief of staff. I think there's something in attempting, even if in a fantasy way, to take yourself more seriously, to take your goals more seriously, even if they feel really like scary and intimidating. What if you took them seriously for a week and saw what happened to your life? Okay, I think I'm going to reach out. There's an interior designer who has an office kind of near my house, and I've seen her in the neighborhood, and I've always been curious to meet her. And maybe I send her an email and ask her for coffee and see how she ended up where she is, how she got into that creative field, how she started her own business, all of that. I don't know if that's a direction that I want to take, but I think meeting other people out there in the real world is always a good step. And you never know what you could learn, either related to your career or just related to life. So I'm going to reach out to the local interior design lady and see where I get. Um, I'm also going to pick another book. Last week it was Susie Welch. This week it was Seneca. Next week, what will it be? Pick another book and let it take you on a journey. I also have been working on this Substack article that I am yet to post, and I need to post it. So the list is longer than last week because there's like 5 things on it, but I can do it. Good luck out there. We got this.